There are 1,000 stories in the Envisioners' future. This is just one of them. Well, hello, good evening and welcome. How the devil are you? I hope you're warm is what I hope you are, because my God, it's not warm, is it? Fantastic to have you with us here on episode 42. My goodness. So we have got a really great show for you. We're taking a break from all of the stuff that we've done on remote schooling, give or take the odd trailer coming up in a second, because I wanted to talk to a fantastic guy that I met, got introduced to, who's doing some incredible work around healthcare and digital. But before we do that, just want to advertise, don't forget tomorrow night coming up at the same time, same bat channel, or actually slightly different bat channel, it's the Parents Zone channel, but you know what I mean, the Remote Schooling SOS live stream. Here is this week's trailer. Hi, Dave Coplin here, bringing you news of this week's Remote Schooling SOS live stream, coming to you live on YouTube, 6 o'clock on Thursday evening. This week, in honour of Safer Internet Day, we'll be asking the question, do family settings and family controls really work? Now, it's a difficult question and it's a complicated answer, but it's going to be a great conversation. We'd love it if you could join us. I'm also going to be taking you through the top 5 peripherals that will completely transform your remote schooling experience. It's going to be a great session. We'd love it if you can join us. It's Thursday night, live on YouTube at 6 o'clock. Hope to see you there. Look at that, eh? And then one final plug from me. So I've been busy doing a series of technology top tips. So if you are remote schooling and you're looking for help with the technology, there's a bunch of stuff you'll also find probably below me actually on the channel that you might find useful. Anyway, enough of the sales talk. Let's get into digital healthcare. Do you know, it's really funny. I was talking to our guest just before we went on air, and we've both been talking about the opportunity for digital in healthcare for more years than I care to remember, certainly actually over 15 in my case. And I know our guest tonight has been doing it for probably a lot longer than that. And so tonight's exam question is really, what does the pandemic change with the opportunity and the role of technology in healthcare? So on that bombshell, let me bring in tonight's guest, which is Olly Cogan, who is the CEO of Alphalake AI. Olly, how are you doing?
I'm good, Dave. Good, yeah. Tired at the end of a long, stressful day, but I'm going to try and just bring it down a notch.
Yeah, well, look, I certainly appreciate that.
All good.
Yeah, do you know, and it's always tough doing the show at 6 o'clock because you're trying, you know, and this is me being selfish. I'm picking a time when the audience will be, you know, out of work. But of course, dear guests like you've had a full-on day, and then I'm going to come and I'm going to start hammering you with some questions, which is going to be quite interesting. So what we're going to do, let's talk about a bit of your journey, Olly. Tell us a bit about Alphalake and how you set that up and how you ended up sort of talking about healthcare.
Yeah, I'll try and give you a succinct version as I can. Yeah, no, first of all, really thanks, Dave, for having me on. I think we came together over the rise of the humans thing, which I thought which we should probably talk about, because that's great minds think alike, kind of the universe sort of conspired for us to meet in that way. But so yeah, we because just to explain the context there, we share the same. We have a hashtag that you named your book after, and I think you went first, so the plagiarism was all on my part, accidental plagiarism, but I should add. But no, so we are rising the humans as a company. So Alphalake is we've got AI in the name, which is a little bit of marketing, but we do try to do a few things with a bit of AI components in it. But it's predominantly mainly automation, so process automation, or a technology called RPA, which stands for robotic process automation, which is a bit of a buzzword out there at the moment in the sort of ether, and that's been sort of, we got into that a couple of years ago. So we launched Alphalake back in the beginning of 2019, pre-pandemic, to get into sort of healthcare technology, and specifically using automation and process automation in healthcare. And I sort of became aware of this technology called robotic process automation, and hadn't done anything with it previously. It was fairly new. I'd been in the private sector in sort of insurance banking for a few years prior. I exited my first company, which was a cybersecurity sort of infrastructure services technology company that I founded back in my sort of mid-20s. So the opportunity to get into healthcare, focused in healthcare, came along in process automation, specifically RPA. On that last 2 years, we've kind of gone on a bit of a journey and realised that RPA, which is the thing that's getting a lot of hype at the moment, isn't necessarily the panacea that though people make it out to be. It should be part of an automation program, but not the full automation program. And so we've been, as a company, trying to help the healthcare industry, and particularly NHS, where we do most of our work, to understand that there is a more efficient way to automate your processes and drive through robust transformation. So we're sort of going against the grain a little bit, because we're going against the hype, which I kind of like. I'm proud to be doing that, because
good for you.
Because right now the world and the NHS and healthcare needs proper, efficient technology transformation, and not a load of people creating sub-industries themselves and making money off the back of, I mean, there's nothing wrong with making money, but it needs to be for the right reasons, right? And that's kind of what we're about at Alphalake. And process automation in healthcare, helping to join up the processes of healthcare, where all that inefficiency is, where we know there's that inefficiency. Just the experience of healthcare we've known has not been great. You go from great, e-commerce experiences, and then you walk into your doctor's surgery, and it's like going back sort of 15 years in time. And how do we change that? And there's been some promise coming through from the pandemic, as a result of things like telemedicine and remote healthcare and stuff. But how do we make that lasting, and how do we make that the transformation, the change program itself efficient? So that's what we're trying to do at Alphalake.
I really like that, Ollie, and it's funny, you opened with our shared heritage around the rise of the humans, which was all about, when I coined that phrase, it was about, let's not focus on the technology, let's focus on what it helps the humans achieve. And I think that's really what attracted to me about your story. And it's always so funny, because I hadn't really thought about this, but I'm going through this same thing with the school stuff, which is, so we've got this issue going on with remote schooling, and you've got the tech companies who sit around the edge, and with the best will in the world, and I love these technology companies, but what they're doing is they're throwing more technology and more information at the problem, when the issue is, you've literally got parents who can't get their printer to work, or the Wi-Fi doesn't work. So don't tell me the 10 ways that Teams or Google Classroom will make my remote schooling experience a more efficient, less stress-free way of working, because I don't care, because right now it doesn't bloody work. Help me. And I think really, when I look at Alphalake and I look at what you're trying to do around the buzzwords of AI and RPA, is, do you know what, actually, this is what we can help you achieve. When you look at efficiency, this is actually what we want to do for you. So I think it is about this elevation of human capability through the application of technology. That sounds like a case study, doesn't it? I'm sorry about that.
No, it's brilliant. I'll quote you on that one. That'll be on our website tomorrow, Dave.
Excellent. All right, perfect. I'll take that. But it is, and I think, the other reason why I thought it was so good, that I wanted to do this with you, Ollie, is you wrote a blog post a few weeks ago called Shell Shocked and Short Change. And let me just, I'll bring it up behind me here. It's a really good read. I'll put the link in the show description so you can see it. But what it talks about, and it sets the scene for the conversation I wanted to have with Ollie tonight, was really talking about the language that's being used in the media about, sort of comparing the war, or I guess the fight against the virus as like it's a war. And the people on the front line are the key workers, and they're the healthcare professionals. And there's no doubt that must feel like that, and that sense of stress and trauma that they're enduring on a daily basis. And what we all know that it's done is it's accentuated the problems in the system, the total healthcare system. And it's accentuated all of the inefficiencies and all of the bottlenecks. It's really highlighted where they are. And it shows that now is the time really for us to try and fix some of those things, some of the things so that actually, and there's another element that really caught my eye I want to come back to a bit later on, but it really is about how do we help healthcare professionals really focused on the human element of healthcare, you know, being given the gift of more time as a result of some application of some clever technology, or the clever application of technology in smart places. Talk to us a bit more about how you see that. I mean, I've just sort of paraphrased what is a really, really thoughtful article, Ollie. But, you know, take us into that and sort of help us understand that context a bit more.
Yeah, no, thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. It was a long article, so I'm glad you got to the bottom of it. I deliberately tried to get a sort of, I want to sort of do a bit more long form sort of writing. I say a bit more. I've always enjoyed writing and the process of writing, but I haven't ever really given myself a chance to do it because you're always just super busy. And I thought, no, do you know what? One of my many resolutions for the new year was to give myself just that space and time to once every month or two just write something a bit meaningful and a bit thought provoking and something that's, you know, in your head, and try and get some of those thoughts down. So then that was my inaugural blog. So thank you for giving it a shout out.
That was a great place to start. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and well, thank you. But it's a very you can see the early the fact that you can probably, you know, an experienced blog writer will quite clearly see there's a lot of it took a few drafts, but anyway, so yeah, in terms of what I was trying to say there, and it does emphasise, you know, and I wasn't trying to talk about our technology and things because it's. Now I heard the article on the BBC News report, and it was the word shell shocked, and I heard that, and I just sort of made me look up and listen and watch and pay attention to what was on TV. I was doing it at the time, and then sort of, no, that's deliberately been used by that BBC journalist, and it did its job. You know, it was like, you know, shell shocked conjures up images of men in, you know, young men in the First World War in trenches, but then with that wording and that narrative and showing what was going on, I think it was in Royal London Free. I'm not sure which. I'm not sure which hospital it was, but it was really. It's striking to see, you know, what some of those in the, you know, the intensive care units that are going through this, and not only having to do this in the stresses of a general day anyway, as a human being living in 2020 and 2021, but then your work being that, it's really quite, it's quite shocking to try and comprehend for those of us that aren't doing it, and I think that just needs to probably be more. I mean, it is there in the news, but it's kind of, when, like anything you see in the news, you see war-torn, countries. It's always, over there, isn't it? The news is always over there. You're always seeing something that's not happening to you. But for a lot of people that are our neighbours on our streets are going and doing that. And I thought, we probably that's not been brought home enough, maybe. And that's what I was trying to do with the blog. And from a technology point of view, and thank you for sort of segueing that into what we do at Alphalake, because. There is so much inefficiency in healthcare because it's kind of never been designed from it. Just the nature of what healthcare is. It's kind of been this patchy thing that's developed over decades, and then there's the personal, health patient data, and there's all those concerns on data governance, which obviously can, which some are rightfully there for good reason, but sometimes it's used as a bit of an excuse to sort of defend certain entrenched, commercial positions in healthcare and things. So. There's lots of complicated reasons why healthcare has always been sort of like, been a bit behind the times. One of them being simply financial, bandwidth, and so there's lots of reasons why it's like that. But we are starting, I think there's a consumer, when we launched Alphalake, I was talking a lot about consumerism of healthcare. And people sometimes hear that and they misunderstand. They think you're talking about privatizing healthcare, which is not at all the same thing. Consumerism of healthcare is putting the power in the hands of the consumer and starting to demand a bit of a better experience. And we love the NHS and we love everything that it does, and I'm massively proud of it. And it sounds almost glib to say that, but anyone that has any experience with it, it's with family members, and hardly anyone comes away from the NHS and doesn't have anything. I mean, there are obviously things that do go wrong, but 99% of the time, people have got nothing but amazing things to say about the people that work.
It's an incredible institution, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and what it stands for and everything. But what they have as an experience from a technology point of view, those working in it, have had a rough ride from a technology perspective for a long time. So how can we take consumerism of healthcare and trying to empower patients more and consumers to take, and that in itself actually takes the burden away more, actually, on a macro level. That takes the burden away from healthcare a little bit, but also put good tools in the hands of people working in healthcare, nurses and doctors, that mean that, this because part of that burden, part of that, that shell-shocked and short-changed is they're getting a rough deal, in terms of, and it's starting to highlight, and hopefully a lasting legacy of the pandemic will be that we do actually, it's not just rhetoric, and we do actually, put our money where our mouth is in terms of looking at paying nurses better and things. And, but one of the other things, hopefully the other lasting legacies is, a lot of that strain, a big chunk of it is administrative. A lot of that strain can be removed. I can't help with an intravenous drip, but I might be able to give a nurse an app that that can mean that they can spend more time. Exactly. And so one final point would just be that I talk quite a lot now about, starting talking in the last few weeks, really, the name sort of to borrow from Elon Musk and Tesla, but to talk about semi-autonomous healthcare. And I've decided to call that, we're going to be doing Alphalake Live on LinkedIn Live. We do it already with a conference series, but I'm going to be launching a new one this year called Alphalake Live, and it's going to be Alphalake Live semi-autonomous. And it's going to be about because the system of healthcare should be running on its running on its own, and the Absolutely. Humans can be returned to human care, and that's what we're trying to achieve. So in a nutshell.
I love that, and I think I'd like to talk about the pandemic actually, and maybe just in a minute. But we're in this world now where lots of people have been woken up to the opportunity of technology, and these are people who traditionally were just closed to it, and not that they've made a sort of a conscious decision to be closed to it, but it just wasn't part of their world. And they wouldn't think, well, why would you want to have a video call with someone? That's just weird. That's something the kids do. Or why would you buy that stuff online? The shop's only just around there. I'm gonna go, and the pandemic has forced us to change all of those relationships. So that's number one, and those people are in the healthcare profession as much as they are in any other profession, right? So we've had that experience. Number two, the extremity of the burden that the pandemic has put on the healthcare system has really exposed all of those inefficiencies that in the past you would have, got over them, or you would have just found another way. I mean, my experience of the NHS is always brilliantly that the technology is just a bit shit. And often, when I'm there as a patient, I'm trying to help them fix, a Windows 98 PC, do you know what I mean, that happens to be powering a particular machinery. And it was one, actually, this is a true story, the keyboards didn't work. So I went and found the IT guy. We got 5 different keyboards. We all got them, some old PS2 keyboards, a whole ball of it. And we sat there and we got it to work.
Showing your age there, Dave. PS2, what's that?
And I'm not talking about PlayStation.
No, exactly.
But the point is, no, it's all good.
I can let you get away with that one without a little.
Today, nobody's got time to go and find the IT guy and mess around with 5 different keyboards. If it doesn't work, exactly. It doesn't bloody work. And I just hope, and this is my question, long-winded question, Olly, and I framed it in the opening to this episode, is, on one hand, we've got this new opportunity, right? We've got more people who are more engaged with technology than ever before, and that's both patients, healthcare professionals, government people, all of that stuff is happening. We've got the terrible context of just the horror that the pandemic has done. When the system gets put under stress, this is what happens. Is this the opportunity for us to be able to say, do you know what, actually, this is time now for us to really embrace digital at the heart of healthcare to transform what we do? Or is it more that actually, do you know what, we couldn't cope with any more change or stress? It's bad enough as it is. Where do you think this all is, Olly? Is this a great opportunity for us, or is it too little too late?
I think yes, it's a great opportunity to give it a short answer. But I think that there is. I have concern that. So we've had some great when this first started, when the pandemic first hit, and we did our first conference that we do on LinkedIn Live. We thought, well, what can we as a company thought? How we're a startup, we were 1 year in at the time, and we were like, how do we even like a lot of businesses? How do we need to develop a strategy here? Like, what do we do? What's going on? We all got together, a handful of us, and sort of planned it. And And the one thing that, and there was, we were sort of maybe 15 or so in the company by that point, and so we wanted to work out, like, what's the best thing to do. The first thought was, well, why don't we just put a conference together? Why don't we just put on something where people can just start talking about some of the challenges and problems, and that's now on part 10 of that conference, and it's been really successful on LinkedIn Live, and we've got some really good traction things. So it's been good from a marketing point of view for the business. But when that first conference, I remember I was walking around in the park, and I did a video to sort of advertise it, and I remember we were talking about, like, what was in market at the time was remote healthcare, and not just telemedicine, because we've talked about this before, Dave, but what fascinates me is how everything with the pandemic and has just been and we called the conference COVID a catalyst for change, because it has just catalyzed so much change. But it isn't so much that the change was already there; it's catalyzed it. It hasn't brought necessarily the change. All of the things that we've seen evolve in technology and the way ours and world, these things were already on that track, and they were sort of they were used by people that worked in technology, video conferencing, things like that, working in an agile way. Certain people, I just took that for granted. They weren't. Certain industries were already doing it, or certain people, or certain types of people were already working in this way. But then it just became something for the masses and consumed en masse. So it wasn't that I think it's brought about much change in that sense. It's just in a very fascinating way, just evolved a lot of things that were already kind of not even under the surface, but just weren't mainstream. It just brought things into the mainstream, whether it is the way we approach retail and the high street, the way we approach working, schooling, and the one thing that's underpinned all of them is this digital. It's that digital, and we talked about it in about the pandemic that I never got a chance to look into it, and I know you took a note when we spoke about it before, but what happened in the Spanish flu, and what catalyzed them, what did it change? I don't know if you got a chance. Did you get a chance to look? Because there's probably some interesting parallels. I didn't either. But we didn't have digital then, though, did we? So there wasn't that underlying sort of thing that just suddenly meant that the way we all communicate, and so there's some very sort of like sort of big things happening that we were already embracing, but not at the level that we have now. But in terms of healthcare, and is it a time for really sort of seizing this opportunity? I think remote healthcare. And the big Amazon and those guys tried to get into healthcare. There's a few things going on there, but there was, I can't remember the name of the consortium that was developed across Amazon, and 3 or 4 of the big players, and that's kind of, I think, being panned now, but there's been this kind of attempt by big tech and things to sort of tackle healthcare and do some really transformative things. It's never really managed to sort of get going. But telemedicine, yes, a lot of the GP clinics are now saying they've seen their telemedicine consultations spike by 6,000%, and there's all these big claims of percentage increases in terms of how much people are having video consultations and things like that. But for me, I think what's more interesting is the remote healthcare, which is what's going to happen to these big hospitals that have always been these, first of all, it was like, well, is it going to become an epicenter of disease contraction? Is that the way, it makes, should we be sending people that are working in back office functions, into hospitals? Should we even be sending radiologists into hospitals? How much of these jobs where people go into hospitals make sense to even all just head to that hospital in that commute? So the wider kind of seismic shift in how we work will impact hospitals as well. And then, but then that makes you think, does it make sense to have these big centre hospitals, or is it going to be more in the community? I think we're going to see much more community. Like, even there's a great co-working space around the corner from where I live, and the great guys set it up, and they had to shut it, unfortunately, when it hit hard, but they've kind of got it going in a different capacity now. But it's like a residential-based co-working space. It's not some big WeWork in the centre of London. It's residential, and I think the word residential and community is going to come out a lot from this. Yeah, anyway.
No, I
see. Whirlwind of thoughts.
No, look, what I love about that, Ollie, is
and that's the same happened with healthcare, I think, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, well, exactly. But the whole point for me, and this is when I fell in love with technology, it was about its opportunity to democratize its power. right across society. And so it will enable us to bring lots of things to lots of different people. And I think that's what, for me, the best legacy from the pandemic will be exactly what you're talking about, is actually we no longer need these big physical spaces where we bring everybody to, and whether it's an office or a hospital, it's kind of, you know, the same deal, but we can start to connect things up in different ways. And I think that's a really big mental leap for a lot of people, that the pandemic will have helped us shift, that we could never have done without it. I've been literally for 10 years talking to people about, well, why are you commuting into London every day to look at the same bit of plastic and glass that you could look at from anywhere else on the planet? That's just mad. And they would, until 10 months ago, they were looking at me like I was the mad one. And now, of course, well, actually, do you know what, I can do it. And it's the same principle, but I think it is that mindset shift. The other bit, and you mentioned it right at the end of the blog post, or 2/3 of the way, and I really loved it because it's an angle that I'd not thought enough about, is, you know, when we talk about careers in healthcare, we often focus on the human end of healthcare, and I completely understand that. But with perhaps the exception of things like radiologists and things like that, we never talk about the incredible opportunity for technical innovation and technical skills and that side, which, you know, I think, and the point you make is that sort of, you know, younger generations are more interested in doing something that's making the world a bit less shit than making themselves a bit more rich. And I think there's a huge opportunity to remarket or change the way that we market careers in healthcare around the opportunity for technology and delivering the benefits that Alphalake is really trying to drive.
Yeah, absolutely. I got that from, and I'm trying to Google as you were talking to remember that. I think I might have referenced it in the actual blog, but there was a great report from, and I can't remember what body did the report on nursing, and I got that from that report that you know, it was like that in nursing, and it was about the pay and the state of pay in nursing, and it was, I think it was it might have been 2019 they did this report, but it was
so Oxford, was it Oxford Brookes? I'm just looking at your.
It was
your
Oxford Brookes. Thank you. Yeah, it was Oxford Brookes did a great report on sort of pay in nursing, but one of the things that came out of it, because we've been talking about pay in nursing for a long time and prioritising these jobs, and you know why do we pay binmen and people more money, and you know these jobs that keep the society going, and why the footballers get it all. And that's been a common thing for decades. We've always questioned that, but. That's quite, obviously it's very prevalent now, and hopefully there will be a change there. But the thing that really struck me in that report was this piece that but it's that perception that nursing is this. Yeah. They came out and said that whilst it is this caring profession, it's almost like the sort of Florence Nightingale from 200 years ago. It hasn't moved on. Nursing now, modern day nursing, is this very dynamic technology sort of infused profession, which you have to be really on the ball, and it's not this mumsy kind of caring. There is that of course, and there should be, and that's wonderful and some amazing. But it's like they were saying that it's not targeting the youth, and I think I compared it to the army adverts and the British Army, and how you look at the adverts of the British Army, they really tap into. I mean, I think they got in trouble a while ago for doing something not quite how they should have done. But generally speaking, I can't remember what it was, but there's a bit of a. It
was a bit too Call of Duty, I think.
Yeah, I think that was it, wasn't it? Yeah, that was. Yeah, so I should be careful what I'm saying. But generally speaking, their marketing is very strong. And if you look at nursing, it needs to, I'm not saying it should go like obviously. The brand of nursing needs to modernise essentially and tap into that that sort of purpose-based. The kids today, they literally, I think I put a quote which is there's nothing less cool for a cool 21-year-old now than a Rolex in a private yacht or private jet. I think that is literally the most saddest thing that a lot of some people are into that still, but most youngsters that have got a bit of coolness about them are like, no, that's exactly. Not cool. So we need to tap into that more.
Absolutely. But your point about sort of modernising, nursing and the healthcare industry, and it's funny because there are so many parallels. I mean, teaching again, because there's one we've been doing a lot recently. It's almost like the perception is that they have to be mutually exclusive. If you do technology, then you can't do the human bit of teaching or the human.
Yeah, exactly. They're not mutually exclusive. Yeah, I'm glad you.
And it's about being supportive, and I think the best teachers right now, as will be the best healthcare professions, are the ones that can use technology to extend the impact that they can have on their patients or the students. That's the opportunity. And I think it's finding people who are going to lead that charge, within healthcare, who are going to stand up like the teachers are right now. And you can see them because there's a few in every school. They're the ones that are, I was going to say nailing remote schooling. I don't think anybody nails remote schooling, but I mean, they're the ones that are dealing with it best and are taking it in their stride and are confident enough to be vulnerable. I don't know everything. I don't know how this is going to work, but we're going to give it a go. And so I think that's, for me, what we've got to do if we're going to sort of be in this world, is how we nurture those people to modernize healthcare, to put digital at the heart of what it is, but not in a replacement for the human staff, but in support, in complement to the human stuff. That seems to be the opportunity.
Yeah, and that's what AI is going to do in healthcare as well. It's not going to immediately. It's going to support, and it's going to assist, and it's going to relieve that burden. People are at their best when they're de-stressed. They're making good decisions, certainly in healthcare, which tend to be pretty important decisions. And so if we can relieve that burden through some assisted, just simple things like, recommendations. AI is going to come in through like recommendation engines and things like that, where it will give guidance to a nurse or a doctor. The nurse or doctor will still be making the final decision for quite a while, maybe in things like radiology, where there's some pretty clever stuff around image recognition and things. That's kind of, will probably go first in terms of actual autonomous AI in healthcare, but certainly it's going to be semi-autonomous for a while in terms of, the human is still going to be left making decision, but that decision is going to be less of a constant cognitive strain on a very stressful day, because I've been given some guidance. I still make the call, but it's just taking that, that constant thinking away, because that's hard for any shift, in any profession for a whole day, let alone being in front of, and there's going to be a backlash. There's going to be, we need to look at things like, we do need to take care of, some of these people have been, at it for a very long time, a whole year of really, and there's already as I said in the blog, there's already, a staffing shortage problem. So we need to, and that's why I was talking about how do we go and attract the younger people? Because there's a disconnect. Why is nursing in healthcare? And actually, I'm seeing it. You look at some of the people that are coming out of Imperial College and things like that in London. There's some really young, enterprising doctors and sort of that are coming into technology that are really like the teachers you talked about, that new generation. And it's our job in our generation, because I'm 38 now. I was going to make a joke to ask you if your years were older than the number of episodes you've done on this shit. When you said there's 41, I was going to ask you if that was to only be as old as the number of episodes I've done would be a deep joy, let me tell you. We might have a couple of years. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you, Dave?
Do you know what? I am nearly 51. And the bizarre thing to me, because I was 50.
You look good for 51.
Thank you.
Not to say that because you invited me onto your show.
It's all done in post-production, let me tell you. But the irony for me is I had huge plans for my 50th, which was on March the 28th. And we went into lockdown like 7 days before. So all of those plans, I'm yet to be 50, technically, in my mind.
Technically, least, you haven't celebrated it yet. Yeah.
So I'm holding that thought, right, for some other moment.
You're still 49, but no. So I think on that, I think our job, to put us in the same sort of, if we are in the same generation, which we are, Dave. I'm 38, and you're sort of late 40s. So we're our job is these younger generation coming through that are the Gen Zs or whatever we want to categorize them as. They are doing things, and they are like, I can't, I like to think I've always been across modern technology and marketing and things like, some of these, I joined Upstream yesterday. I don't know if you've seen that app, and it's like this, and they're all on there, and I'm like, there's a new thing coming through, and I'm naturally always I'm going to be a little bit, but our job is to, what they all take it for granted in terms of this technology and into professions like nursing and doctors and healthcare. But I see our role as one of it helping them get that into the system, because in terms of, that's what our responsibility is. They'll know how to do it. It'll be taken for granted. They'll have the latest technology, but they need to be our almost custodians, if you like, of the future of their
Well,
technology.
and that's brilliant because I have this line, and it's been aimed at education, but actually it's the same here. As a technologist and also someone in my generation, we are the custodians of their future. So we're the only
Yeah, so I was
people
literally
that
going to
can.
say that. I thought it would sound
Yeah.
corny, but
Well, no, but look,
no,
and it may sound corny,
exactly, yeah,
but I think it's
literally,
bloody right.
yeah.
We're the
No,
only
it's
people.
true, it's true, yeah.
We can open the doors, we can set the ground so that those people can continue to go further, just in the same way that the generations that preceded us, and I'm looking at you, Dad, opened doors for us to enable us to go forward and do those sorts of things. And Mum too. I mean, I always forget Mum, but the point is, that's what we've got to do. We've got to make it easy for them to sort of take that. Because the thing I love about the people that you're talking about is they don't even give the technology a second thought, right? And it's not they're digital.
Neither did we at 20, Dave. That's the
No,
thing.
exactly.
And that's what we've got to tap.
Yeah, exactly,
better.
exactly.
We've never been that good at it. But we'll get there. AI will take care of it.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think the thing that we've got to recognise, and I hate the fact that why we've been given this opportunity, but we have an opportunity now of a society that is ready to be properly digital. And in my 30 years in the tech industry, I've never had a chance this big to actually make lasting change happen. And I hate the fact as to why it's happened, but it's an opportunity that lies in front of us, and I think that's the thing that we've got to do. Olly, I want to put you on the spot, and we're coming close to time, so this is the big summary question. What's going to be the big barrier to you being successful in making this happen, and what are the kinds of things that we can do to reduce it or remove it or manage it?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because there are barriers, and that's the frustration, because we're doing some really innovative stuff. So one of the things we've done, without wanting to plug anything too much, is we've used Microsoft Teams to build a chatbot within Microsoft Teams that gives literally what we've been talking about, encapsulates everything we've been talking about, which gives the power to doctors and nurses to, on the wards or administrative staff in healthcare, to interface with multiple different systems. And it is literally the rise of the humans, because what automation is ultimately doing is just elevating our levels of interface, right? That's what automation is about. And at every stage, we're becoming a higher level in the game. And so Teams is this almost ubiquitous thing in healthcare. Slack was the disruptor and the innovator. Microsoft sort of, liked what they saw, and fair enough with Microsoft.
Classic Microsoft.
I don't want to say too much of you obviously being a former Microsoft, but no, they're very good strategically, Microsoft, and so Slack's come in and done this great thing in terms of collaboration tool, and Microsoft Teams has sort of embraced that, but Microsoft Teams is now sort of they've done this big tie-up with NHS Digital and Microsoft, and they've rolled out across the whole of the NHS. And so there's this tool. We were going to bring out this WardBot app, and we realised we don't need to bring out an app. There's already an app there for us. It's called Microsoft Teams. What we need to build is a chatbot, not an app. So because then Microsoft have got a slightly bigger UX department than Alphalake. They can maintain this optimized UX, and we can concentrate on the UX of the chatbot. So that's what we're doing with our Alphabot for Teams platform. But to get that into the NHS, it's innovative in terms of the efficiencies, in terms of elevating that interface, so we don't bring out yet another electronic patient record system, and we're using another level of interfacing across different systems and solving one of the biggest problems in healthcare, which is interoperability and process flow. And so we're working with another technology that we do that with called Workato from over in Silicon Valley, that are doing a really good job. And that's like this kind of Lego brick sort of approach to automation, which is nice and slick. And so, but that's what we're trying to do. But getting that into healthcare is challenging. And so to answer your question, the challenge is and I thought about this the other day, lots of people talk about in digital health, and there's lots of rhetoric and discussion around the problems of trying to break the NHS. It's like, pop stars trying to go over to America is the problem, trying to break America, but trying to break the NHS into, not break, but get into the NHS. From a technology point of view is challenging. So the biggest challenge is getting, and I know people in the NHS, and we're quite well, and we do a good job of our marketing, and so we've got some good things going, but it's still very challenging as a small, innovative, thinking company to get through that barrier of, and so everyone talks about these challenges, and it's like, but I realize people don't thought about it. And for me, the challenge is that for all the talk of innovation in healthcare, and there are some positive things coming through, and so I don't want to be too negative about it, but in the private sector, the ability to take on innovation and procure innovation, or the appetite for it, just seems to be a lot stronger. In the NHS, people almost will talk about there's innovative rhetoric, but if that means displacing my entrenched relationship with an existing, stalwart of the NHS as a supplier that's very stuck in its ways from 20 years ago, I won't name any names. There's a lot of clinical systems that are like that don't open up, they're not integrated, they're very sort of defensive in their mindset. And they have relationships that exist around the NHS that, and it's very cliquey sometimes. So I don't want to, I'm just talking about some of the challenges. So that is one of the biggest challenges. How can you get genuine innovation over the line? And I think within the NHS, we need to be better at that, because there's this sort of, not just from a selfish point of view, there is this kind of like, we'll talk a good game, but we're just still going to carry on, but we'll renew our contract with the 20-year-old software that hasn't innovated in the last 20 years kind of thing, and that's yeah.
Well, and the danger there is the sort of the person at the center of this, or the people at the center of this, so both the healthcare professionals, but more specifically the patients, they're the one that lose from that, right? And I think that's the and it is so interesting with the healthcare system about, in any other industry, what would happen is another industry player would enter and out innovate and would cause the old, banking is a classic example. What happens to, I used to go and see the big banks years ago, and they're like, look, we love all that innovation stuff, but you see that over there, that computer the size of 6 buildings, that's called our mainframe, and that's our legacy, and we can't touch that, and we're not going to touch that. And then of course Monzo turns up and Revolut turns up, and guess what, they can touch the 6 bloody machines, because they're going, if they don't do it, they're dead in the water. I don't really get the sense in the UK in particular that anything like that is going to happen to healthcare. So it's going to be interesting to watch that dynamic play out. Yeah,
but I would imagine they hide behind the data. Sorry to go over you there, but they hide behind the data governance a lot. It's like, the default is, well, it's not safe to put that in Teams or something, and it's like, well, you pull that apart and you go, that's just such a default response, and it's like, are you really thinking about disrupting? And there's lots of round tables and there's things, various sort of, but yeah, I don't want to be too sort of bashing of the sector, because I'm obviously in the middle of it, but it is a challenge. So I'm just answering your question as honestly as and
I really appreciate that. I mean, I think the other challenge I think that sits in front of us is the whole sort of thing around data and privacy and how we manage that and what we need to do, and that's as much a societal issue as it is a healthcare industry issue. But I would love us to be able to open that up. Olly,
seems Sir Tim Berners-Lee's doing some interesting stuff. It's called solid technology, and they've been up these data pods, and it's this, and there's another lady I know that's doing some quite innovative stuff around that sort of decentralized data trusts, and I think that's where it's going to go with data. I'm not sure exactly how that will pan out, but
that's been because that's been playing out for years, and I remember Microsoft's Health Vault was an example of that, but there were much better examples of great innovation going back a decade or so, of that sort of federated data repositories, which which probably is the future, right? And so be really interesting to see that play out.
It might be where blockchain ends up going and being more useful than actually Bitcoin. But
No, absolutely, and I love that you brought blockchain into it. I mean, no show would be about the future would be complete without a mention of blockchain or Bitcoin. I mean, I'll take either of those. But anyway, Olly, look, I'm going to have to call it time. It's been so wonderful, and God, we could have gone on. Oh, well, I would love to have gone on for hours talking, especially about that sort of what is it going to take to really make this happen. So maybe we'll get the opportunity to do that again at some point.
Set up another couple of jump-off points for other conversations.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time with us. It's been really, really great to have you with us, Olly. So thanks for that.
No worries. Cheers.
So there you go, folks. That was it. Sorry we run on a bit long, but I think you'll agree it was a conversation worth having. Hope you enjoyed that. You know the drill. If you've enjoyed it, give us a like. If you haven't, tell us why, and we'll try and do our best to fix that. And also give the old subscribe button a little tickle if you haven't done already. Always good. Do you know what? We probably won't be back next week, bizarrely, because there are lots of things going on, lots of projects, in particular the parent stuff that needs some attention. So we'll be back soon with some more stories. Thanks for joining us. Keep your eyes peeled for what we're going to do next. Have a great week and stay warm. See you soon.
There are 1,000 stories in the Envisioners' future. This is just one of them.